Welcome back to another Q&A. If you have any questions, post them down below and the most likely ones will be answered next time or can be covered as a standalone topic. So don't be shy and let's get started. First question, do you still hate Smith machines? No. In fact, it's become my favorite machine to use in the commercial gym. Why? It offers a similar feel to the classic barbell movements with equal loading potential, but stability is enhanced, thus maximizing motor unit recruitment. Of course, you don't get the converging aspect, and it is more restrictive, but that could be a benefit in its own right for certain movements like the JM press without arm size coming into play, as well as incline pressing for a vertical press to the clavicle, and even squats for a quad biasing hack, similar to a hack squat. It's also easy to get into for all experience levels as the skill element is eliminated. So you'll never misgroove your reps, which can make a big difference for non-advanced bodybuilders. Now for me, a regular bench looks practically identical to a Smith bench, and that's part of the reason why you often see me grind so much without failing. I can take those risks, but it doesn't change the fact that the Smith machine is tailor-made for high-intensity training. For everyone, all of you can execute slow reps. It just comes naturally, and so you'll have a higher proximity to failure. You'll learn to maximally push hard without any limiting factors. It's dummy-proof from day one. You don't have to be a bench specialist to get to a certain level where everything looks like a perfect elevator and you're able to get through that sticking point no matter what. So on paper, this can be superior for pure hypertrophy and for those following low-volume programs who are trying to milk their so-called last 5 to 10% or so of gains. Without losing the familiarity aspect of barbells, you can seamlessly go back and forth and lift similar weights. In a way, you don't lose track of your strength or get distracted by the weird leverages of other machines. Like you'll often see guys hammer strength pressing 4 to 5 plates for reps, yet they can't even Smith machine bench 3 plates. That's because for pushing motions, free weights and the Smith machine are always going to be mid to lengthen bias. Lastly, stability is the #1 criterion for high force production, not alignment. So when looking at hypertrophy tiers, even optimal bros are choosing the Smith machine as the second highest rank next to converging lengthen bias machines, which, let's be honest, are a rarity in the vast majority of gyms across the globe. I've only seen it once at Pure Muscle. And you're paying a premium for that membership, not to mention that those pieces will likely be unavailable given their newfound popularity. And if you buy one for your own home gym, it takes up a lot of space and money compared to a Smith machine or simple rack attachment, which I hope to be getting very soon. Stay tuned. I'll keep you updated with Bells of Steel. They've got a game-changing Smith rack attachment in the works. So from a feasibility standpoint, and for what most of us will be doing in the gym, the Smith machine is the best machine you can use for bodybuilding. All the time-proven benefits of barbell training apply here, so you know for a fact that you can't go wrong. Just that now you're a bit more stable and can train harder. That's it. And this whole talk about compromising the movement pattern is powerlifting dogma. Obviously, if you want the best raw bench, you want to use free weights for skill specificity. But for building the primary movers, there is no argument here. And that's how I'm addressing this question. Again, less stabilization is good for hypertrophy. So what used to be considered the biggest con now proves to be the biggest pro. So yes, at this point, the Smith machine is fully redeemed, and all of us who talk trash about it were wrong. In truth, it has a slight edge over barbells, although I do believe the difference is marginal in the end. Either way, I'm going to mix in both for certain motions that feel better and for training at the gym, where a Smith machine is preferable over an old power rack or benching station with a whippy barbell, which make it more unstable. The machine itself can overcome other external factors and save you time and effort in terms of setup, which I value, and chances are you do too. I've noticed that most, if not all, of your presses recently are done with a thumbless suicide grip. Why are you choosing that over normal thumb over grip? It's not most movements, but I have reintroduced the false grip from time to time, specifically for close grip stuff or super wide, where the alignment with the wrists and elbows is not ideal. This allows me to work around the bar by angling the hands, which lets me better tuck or flare depending on the exercise. So for a true close grip bench press, say a finger in the smooths, removing the thumb eliminates the lateral wrist pressure, and tucking comes so easily, you don't have to fight yourself. And on wide grip pull-ups, it's similar but in reverse. The wrist can flare in the same way that you're spreading the bar apart, which reduces golfer's elbow and even increases the surface area from which you can grip if you are slightly cupping over near the palms. So your grip can feel stronger and you'll likely get a better lat squeeze. This explains the common sentiment that thumbless vertical pulls offer an easier mind-muscle connection. What about V-bar pushdowns and easy bar skull crushers? The false grip is way easier on the elbows for the same reasons. It better aligns you by reducing lateral moment arm pressure, and there's more palm pressure. I find you even feel the triceps grinding more. Heck, I love using fat grips on a V-bar pushdown. And the expensive alternatives like the dog bone style are naturally fat for that reason. Lastly, concerning safety, I am not concerned in the slightest as I always train in a power rack with safety pins or straps. You should too. So my many years of using this grip, including maxing out, not once has the bar fallen out of my hands. You're still gripping hard with the fingers. You just don't have the extra thumb support. But who's flicking their wrist mid-set? And what about using wrist wraps to cast that position? It's actually rare for it to fall out, even more so if you bench or OHP with a 29mm bar. Like my new Leonidas barbell, be sure to check it out. Not the skinny ones used for weightlifting. You want a stiff bar without whipping your grip out of control. That is the primary cause behind bench fail videos that's often overlooked. So check your setup and understand that the bar path is slightly altered, having more freedom within the elbow corkscrewing effect. Yes, there's less irritation, but if you can lift more with less pain, isn't that a worthy trade-off? For me, it sure is. I love the false grip on close grip bench, wide grip bench as well, which I rarely do, and wide grip pull-ups, as well as overhead pressing for a smoother lockout. What split when starting with calisthenics, primarily push-ups and pull-ups, and how to incorporate legs, full body up or lower. I have chicken legs. I'd appreciate any guidance how to set up my week in training overall. Thank you so much. So calisthenics templates, whether for beginners or elites, are surprisingly not all that different. Why? Because the foundational movements can often be supersetted efficiently, like the dip bar and pull-up bar are usually next to each other. And there's a natural incentive to stay lean and build crazy work capacity in this discipline via high sets and high reps. Also, leg training isn't really optimal in calisthenics, so you're better off incorporating it at the end of your regular workout. This typically includes pistol squats, some explosive deficit lunge variation, or high rep down workout, followed by reverse Nordic curls or sissy squats for quads, and GHR or Nordic curls for the hamstrings. And truth be told, many athletes often just do band leg curls, which they already use to help with their bodyweight bar pull-ups. But honestly, what's most common is just ending the session with pistol squats, high rep lunges, and then going for a 2-mile run. Or doing endurance training only for the legs and high volume calisthenics upper body at the park. So there's many approaches, but if you ask me, the best split by far for a novice is full body. A basic around the world template where you perform pull-ups, dips, push-ups, and bodyweight squats will get the job done. Building a base, getting higher reps, adding more revolutions, reducing the rest, and eventually going weighted is key. Or including inverted rows with maybe some ring isolation work into the mix, or doing so after this main giant set is finished. I found that you don't need more than 10 sets per workout. The way I used to do it was 5 to 10 pull-ups, 10 dips, and 25 push-ups with no rest. After 15 sets, I eventually started wearing a 40-pound backpack but lowered the volume. And then for legs, I would do box jumps, pistol squats, and jog 5 kilometers every morning. I trained like that for a good 3 years, then joined the gym. On day 1, I was already repping weighted dips and pull-ups with over a plate. It also took me 8 months to bench 225 for reps, even squatting 315 ATG high bar for reps in that same time frame. The calisthenics had massive carryover, and it literally followed the most basic Hannah Ball for King style routine. It works. Try it every other day for 3 to 4 times a week frequency and auto-regulate according to how you feel. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter what split you choose. But a push-pull 4 times a week setup with some leg work thrown in at the end with frequent cardio is also a terrific option if you don't want a superset, which is better if you're doing weighted calisthenics. But with the high rep superset stuff, you can eventually get fit enough to handle it and not really get tired. But if you did a 5 rep max weighted dip with 4 plates, good luck hitting another PR immediately after on weighted pull-ups. You're fatigued in a different way. So you can either train more like a street lifter and split your main movements up to allocate maximum force production, or go actual street style and build your endurance at the same time. I'm a newbie to the weight room in my 40s. Want to do your novice program? Do you still believe in your 2 times a week philosophy, or did you change your mind on anything? Please give me some practical guidelines to work with. Thanks. The novice program was written in 2015, with its last revision in 2019, 4 years later. Has my lifting philosophy changed since then? Yes. And the only thing that's remained consistent is my conjugate thought process. But my exercise selection, split, and volume parameters did a complete 180. That said, it would seem that my novice program still ticks a lot of these boxes today. In a way, it was super ahead of its time, but accidentally. The 4 to 6 rep range was a way of adding a double progression element in a similar intensity zone to a traditional 3 sets of 5 or 5x5 program, ensuring higher effort. And since novices aren't going to do squats and deadlifts to failure, we can assume 1 rep in reserve, which is perfect here given the high percentages. If you understand Henneman's size principle, you'll know that we have maximum force production from rep 1. So my program forced high effort on the big hitters without overdoing the volume. Yet it was still maximized in its exercise selection, not just the big 3, but also the key accessories and isolations, thus reducing muscle damage. This allowed for 3 full body workouts a week with perfect recovery, 48 hours between sessions. Just to say, a lot of optimal bros are now following a similar strategy to reduce weekly net fatigue. So it turns out the silver era full body approach was correct once again. And my way of programming was heavily inspired by them back in the day. So Reg Park's 5x5 was the first, which everyone basically modified off, including Bill Starr, Mark Ripito, Mehdi from Stronglifts, Jason Blaha, and eventually myself. So if it's a question of datedness, the program served its purpose and has historical support, including thousands of testimonials. In fact, my page has been viewed by over 2 million lifters, and I'm still getting emails about results to this day. So everything promised is a realistic expectation. And even though I could change it, I'm not going to, because it's been around for almost a decade and basically stands alone. Some guys who don't even watch me on YouTube are running it, so let them. I'm not touching it, but I'm strongly considering releasing a brand new one, which I've been alluding to for some time now. Now, before you get all excited, know that there's no reason to be, unless you plan on not lifting for next year. Why? Because if you run my novice program now, you will be out of the novice phase in no time. And even if, theoretically, the new program were to be available right now, the gains still wouldn't be that much quicker. Don't get your hopes up. It'll be more so a preference thing, offering yet another option. We know very well to get novices jacked by now. It's the easiest thing to do, and it's fast enough. The real test of a coach's knowledge is dealing with lifters who've entered the intermediate stage, trying to hit advanced. And the ultimate level is coaching a step above, those trying to break through plateaus that have lasted for months or even years. Those are my favorite guys to work with. Borderline advanced lifters with physiques comparable to mine, but needing that extra bit of knowledge and experience to reach the next level. Novice stuff is easy mode, and most novices don't need coaching. Any basic novice program will provide similar gains. So please, don't wait around for your favorite influencer to release a new one. By then, you would have been out of that phase, and it wouldn't have made a big difference in the first place. Regarding 2 times a week full body workouts, hell yeah, it's the most efficient split for saving time. I trained that way for years, stopping around December of 2019. Most of my YouTube career featured that split, and OGs remember. If you ask me, 90% of my physique after novice stage was built in this way. I was dead benching 375 and hitch deadlifting 585 before ever switching to an upper-lower template, which I ran from 2020 to October of 2022. After that, I started having fun with different splits, but I really haven't built that much more muscle since then. Maybe a bit under 10 pounds of pure lean tissue. And just to clarify, it's not the split that accounted for these extra gains. Preference and time are the true X factors here. I'd be just as big had I continued full body. The only reason I didn't was for bench press specialization and to stop being so lazy with my leg training, because I would do the bare minimum and I was capable of unlocking a different level of squat performance, which you eventually saw. And also because I had a home gym where I could literally work out at any time. Why was I killing myself with grueling full body workouts? Keep in mind, I only use free weights on big heavy compounds and max out every week while training hard with high proximity to failure. You see my grinds, often adding supersets as well. So my workouts were annihilating. After a session, I'd be so dead that I'd often pass out right away, even with pre-workouts. And I mostly train at night during those days. So full body workouts can take you from a complete beginner to the pinnacle of natural bodybuilding. There's no physiological reason to deviate away from it. It is a choice based on enjoyment and knowing how to effectively divide the stimulus to avoid overworking yourself and recover between sessions. And most importantly, having the mental and physical toughness to endure. Full body is hard as hell, probably the hardest system you can run. Work capacity can limit you, so it keeps you in check. It's even tougher if you train old school because your whole body is taxed. Everything is bracing and stabilizing. So you better be a fit, disciplined badass. But the major benefit here is that everything recovers together. You can do full body 2 times a week every 72 hours. Trust me, nothing is better on recovery. And there's zero muscular overlap. So all these programming concerns that people have about blending go out the window. You'll OHB, squat, deadlift, bent over row, dead hag pull up, and pull over in the same day. Everything gets hit. But you'll be so tired by the end, and you'll deserve that rest. So do what you want. Full body will always have a special place in my heart, and I'm always tempted to go back into it. The time-saving benefits alone are worth exploring. I have triceps tendonitis. While healing it, how can I train my chest, front delts, and back? How to train with bad elbows? It's simple. Reduce triceps emphasis by ensuring vertical forearms on every press. Avoid close grip presses, whether flat or vertical, and any exercise that involves more arm tuck and inwards diagonal forearms. Even though the extra involvement might not be significant since presses are still limited by the primary movers, being the chest or shoulders for bench press or overhead press, the point is to avoid tucked elbows and flare them out slightly. Now false grip can help here. I also recommend performing lengthened partials to really take out the triceps lockout. On the bench, you'll feel your pecs ballooning. You can do the same with push-ups. Wear elbow sleeves to keep the area warm and compressed. While they don't necessarily prevent injuries, they make you feel more comfortable and can make a difference as the workout progresses, especially when you hit triceps isolation work later. Speaking of which, focus on non-restrictive isolation exercises like dual rope pushdowns, single arm pushdowns, and extensions done with cables or dumbbells. Avoid barbells for now. Reintroduce them only after you've built adequate tissue capacity in other motions and gradually build up pain tolerance. Sometimes, pain is just a sign of weakness, similar to guys who complain about lower back pain. It's often not the disc issues, but rather thin spinal erectors. So, triceps tendon issues can take a while to correct, and rushing into heavy JM presses and then complaining that they're too risky misses the point. Physiologically, they're less restrictive than skull crushers, and arm wrestlers use them to fix negative pain in a sport focused on lateral pressure. If they can handle that, you can eventually handle problematic motions too. Will doing lower back work on Monday affect my OHB work on Tuesday? That depends on your strength. If you weigh 180 and can rep your body weight on any given day, chances are your recovery will be compromised due to the greater bracing demand. I found issues appear in the 1 to 1.2 times body weight multiplier range. At that point, the absolute load is not only harder to recover from, but you can also feel if your spinal rectors are under recovered, especially if you lean back as you get closer to failure. I know you're not hinging, but if you just did heavy back squats and deadlifts the day before, you can't tell me that standing OHP will feel equally as strong. That hasn't been my experience at all. In fact, I even dropped bent over rowing at some point as I noticed better recovery and blending to my OHP, and vice versa. So if you're overhead pressing in the 135 to 175 zone, this probably doesn't matter as much. But at 185 and above, so a plate and a half per side, the weaker lower back can become a problem if you're not factoring in the rest of your programming. So you better be belting up or sit down if you're not recovered. At what fat percentage should I bulk? I went from 26.3 to about 16%. When should I start to bulk? Whenever you feel mentally ready. Don't rush back over to 25% or even aim to get there. The truth is, 16% falls within the bear mode range. So you shouldn't have any problems gaining muscle in the maintenance phase or even with a tiny surplus. Take your time to gain weight and cap your body fat at 20% to avoid needing a long cut afterward. You don't want to be getting too fluffy again after a successful cut. It should take 6 to 12 months to hit upper bear mode, and your body weight might fluctuate because you're still able to make progress at a healthy, reasonable level of fluff. Also, consider a simple question that's often overlooked. Are you even 16% body fat to begin with? Body fat estimates can be off by 2 to 5%, so it's possible that you're already at 20% and don't need to bulk at all. You don't realize how much fat you're carrying until you drop to 10% or below. For example, I can be 185 with abs at 5'5", looking more defined than 80% of lifters, yet still have another 30 pounds of fat to lose. So if you prematurely stopped your cut or are happy with your current physique, which I commend, body dysmorphia sucks, and you're a late beginner or intermediate who's falsely assessing his body fat, then I tell you to chill at 16%. Like when I hit the 180s, my body weight plateaus for a long time, fluctuating between 181 to 187. It's impossible to go above that unless I force feed or eat garbage foods. Yet in that zone, I'm at peak bear mode and still hit PRs monthly. I don't need to bulk to the 190s or 200s to make gains. That's never been required. Even as an elite natural, it's not necessary if your body fat is higher. Only those who are shredded or at most 12% body fat need to worry about this. The moment you don't look like a typical fitness influencer, that's when gains and recovery are optimal. So right now, I strongly believe you won't have trouble gaining muscle if you eat naturally, ensure adequate protein intake, consistent calories, and micronutrient-rich foods for health purposes. You'll be perfectly fine without rushing back into bulking, especially an aggressive one. Do you think that on volume days, doing only 2 sets with back off sets in most cases, since I like it to failure per exercise, is optimal for maximum muscle gains? That's how I've been training for the last 2 years, so yes, I do believe it's ideal, but with some caveats. I've grinded my life away with true failure training and realized it's not optimal from a recovery standpoint. If I literally get stapled, I can't handle more than 1 set for a big exercise, as it will take me another whole day to recover. Historically, I've always trained muscles twice a week, split 72 hours apart. And so when I started training exclusively to failure with slow as snail velocities, often with a 10-second grind, it would take me 96 hours to recover. This was a problem and led to program hopping in order to figure out a way how to best blend muscle groups while also getting my twice a week frequency in. At one point, my split was very Jordan Peters inspired, and even though I got great results training this way, it interfered with my filming schedule, given the uneven split. In the past, I always did full body on Mondays and Thursdays, with GPP stuff and accessories on Tuesdays and Fridays, or a classic upper lower on the same days, including the 3-day version, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or an upper lower and push-pull hybrid, again, for that 72-hour recovery effect. But when I trained all out with the highest intensity imaginable, I needed a day off in between leg days, and I couldn't handle much overlap. Even the dead hang aspect of pull-ups, which feature some pec involvement, or say pullovers and the chest expander work, would vary from doing it on push days to pull days. I trashed my major muscles so hard that they were somewhat affected the next day. So I quickly figured out that leaving 1 rep in the tank or hitting 9.5 RPE made much more sense than going RPE 10 or beyond failure. The extra fatigue is not worth it unless you're training a muscle only once a week, or are doing so on your last set or the end of a mesocycle, or for an isolation exercise that's not systemically taxing. But if you're doing squats and deadlifts to failure, you're in for a rude awakening. Sick people like me will do it. So regarding the 2 sets philosophy, just slightly dial back the intensity and add 1 major compound movement to get the same volume as a traditional 3 sets approach across 2 compounds. Instead of doing, say, 3 sets of bench and 3 sets of OHB, try 2 sets of bench, 2 sets of a dumbbell press, then 2 sets of OHB. This way, you can work more muscles at similar angles, reduce overuse, and enhance progression on sets that count. Regarding the back offset approach, this is purely an auto-regulation technique. It's not magical and not necessary, even though it's common with 2 sets. Simply put, if you overshoot your numbers and hit 4 to 5 reps on your first set, you might want to drop the load by 10 to 15% on your second set to avoid doing triples or risking dropping below the hypertrophy rep range. If you got 6 reps on your first set at 1 rep in reserve, I wouldn't bother dropping the load. But if you got 4 reps at 1 rep in reserve, then there's a risk there. You could get 4 or you might not. But even if you do, you'd be better off dropping the weight to lessen fatigue and get the same hypertrophic stimulus. That's the moral of the story. Don't kill yourself with ball-busting intensity even if you're following a low-volume program. Personally, I've never exceeded 6 sets for a muscle in a workout unless it's an inefficient high-rep calisthenics session. And the stronger I get, my volume tolerance appears to be even less, including with getting more out of less weight. Alex, do you think Greg Plitt was natural? I know it's random, but I've been watching a lot of his stuff lately. He was a legend. I don't know if he was a lifetime natural when he was younger, but he often spoke against steroids during the peak of his internet growth.
Steroids and shit kill you. Kill you, motherfucker. Do not fucking do that. Do not pay a price of 10, 30 years of your life for the temporary enjoyment of some crap that when you come off of you lose.
You lose the greatest reward of the accomplishment and the fact that you did it. You can't say that anymore.
So you're trying to get something you haven't fucking deserved yet, and using steroids for that reason, you're a asshole. That's not what's going to turn people's heads. And if it does, it's like, oh, that's steroids. You know, and then all that work just went out the window with that comment. Like, oh, of course, I can do that if I use steroids too. You get someone that's trim, small waistline, just comes up massive, where he's moving everything, every single motion, and a relaxed state or a flex state is tight and looks good. That's a natural physique right there. That's something to aspire to. That's something that's attainable through hard work and sacrifice. And the beautiful thing is, once you obtain that through the hard work and the sacrifice, oh, by the way, guess what else you get? An extra bonus gift called mental toughness, confidence. So even though you transform your body naturally and you had this great physique, now all of a sudden you had the demeanor and the mental strength to overcome anything else. And by the way, by the time you had that body going that process, you probably have a very financial, successful life, a good marriage, or whatever it may be. They go hand in hand. It's a win-win. You did the wrong thing and you got rewarded. You're gonna think you can do it again and again and again. And I don't know when along the line it's gonna catch up to you, and you're going to have to pay the price for your actions. I guarantee you, if it doesn't happen now, it's going to happen later in life, where it's more than you paying that price.
What I care about is that what you're basically admitting to yourself is that who you are isn't good enough. You need to take something else to be all that. That's scary. Because there's no pill you can take in life.
During that time, it's possible he wasn't using anything. And looking back, his physique was 100% naturally achievable. Now, from what I could see, his most aesthetic physique between 2009 and leading up to his death looked exactly the same. He basically plateaued, and his physique never yo-yoed. He looked young and healthy, didn't have that typical Reuter skin, graininess, fullness, or weird proportions. In fact, his legs and lats were lagging, and he often used a fisheye lens while oiling up at the gym to look a bit bigger. In normal conditions, especially in clothes, he looked less impressive than a lot of real natural bodybuilders today. His best shots that DLs love to talk trash about are exclusively from professional photo shoots, which is a different comparison. At this point, I would know. And you can't just look at magazine covers when you can literally watch his YouTube videos and talking head segments to see what his physique looks like under normal conditions. I don't think most critics have. Like, I was a member of his paid site years ago and watched most of his videos. He looked natural to me in all of them, definitely obtainable and doable for many of you, but of course, it's not going to be easy. It's probably going to take you 10 years to look like that. Just to say, Greg Plitt started lifting around age 12. So at 37, that's 25 years of experience, of which 6 years before that, he stopped making gains completely and maintained that look indefinitely. Plus, he wasn't even shredded. He was around 12% body fat. So let's just say it took 15 years to weigh 185 to 195 at 6'1", with 18-inch arms, a 33-inch waist, which is pretty big considering, and a 46-inch chest. Guys, Jeffrey Verity Schofield is bigger than that. So from a lean body mass perspective, youthfulness, timeline, and realism factor, one can easily make the case that Greg Plitt was natural. Or that if he wasn't, it still doesn't matter. You can acquire those stats if you give it time. Regardless, the world will never know. What do you think? Last question, do you think wrestler bridges are okay or not worth the risk? I think they're perfectly reasonable, and their so-called risk of danger has been overblown by yet again one influencer. This is the same influencer who fearmongered you into not doing upright rows, dumbbell flies, rack pulls, and behind neck presses, who has now been proven wrong in all those cases. So, whether you're doing a neck extension with a harness or a wrestler bridge, your neck is performing the same function. Whether it's open or closed chain, the cervical discs don't care, and there's always compression. Now, the reason you might see more injuries with bridging is simply due to load management. You've got weak beginners new to neck training trying to do them without easing their way in with regressions or having experience with plate-loaded exercises first. So if you didn't build any tissue capacity and your neck isn't strong enough to handle your whole body weight, then you can't blame the bridge if it then hurts you in a bad way. Just to say, I've done upside down bridging, even weighted with plates on my chest, or doing so with my neck flex harness, band resisted. And I've never had a neck injury or strain. And I worked out like that hardcore from 2015 to 2020. You also have Mike Machine Bruce, who has been bridging for over 20 years without any problems. Another OG, Legendary Strength, did a 335-pound wrestler bridge static hold. 10 years later, there are still no disc issues to be found. Of course, these are just our anecdotes, but I think it speaks volumes that your cervical discs will not quickly or randomly snap in half as a result of long-term bridging, and especially not initially. If that does happen, it means you rushed into it. Take accountability. Referencing old wrestlers who supposedly have neck pain is a terrible example because, for one, many of them stopped training completely, which puts you at a higher risk for pain. Two, they were on PEDs, which independently increases injury risk. And three, they mostly overtrained and had heavy dudes pulling on their necks trying to rip their damn heads off. It's not the small amount of bridging that messed them up. It was the competition or extreme training phases where overuse and excessive volume and frequency were leading contributors to these injuries. It was leading up to the competition. But an average neck training enthusiast who does maybe 5 sets of bridging a week is not going to have these problems. Heck, you're probably not going to be so strong or so weak that you hurt yourself. Otherwise, that's just an ego problem. It's on you, bro. So with that said, bridge if you don't want to use a neck harness or your calisthenics, bro. But know that it's not necessary. If you prefer regular neck curls and neck extensions, your neck is not missing out on anything. But realize you're still flexing and extending. It's like saying, oh, don't do deadlifts, but back extensions are perfectly fine for the discs. Why? The spine is doing the exact same thing. The only thing that changed is the load. And that's the problem. Weak guys are exceeding their tissue's capacities, going too heavy, and then falsely blaming the exercise as inherently dangerous. This is reverse causation, and modern pain science does not agree with this position. So if you built a base with, let's say, one plate with neck curls and neck extensions, or better yet, exceeded your body weight on the 4-way neck machine, which is totally reasonable, I've done this in the shredded state, then what's your body weight? Chances are you can roll around in an efficient hypertrophy rep range. But on the other hand, if the bridge feels like a 1-rep max, or you struggle to get full range of motion under control with, let's say, 5 rolls back and forth, then you're playing with fire. So assess your neck level. I would say bridging is for intermediates in neck training and should not be the starting point. But it is something you can eventually progress to if you take the necessary steps beforehand and correctly analyze your neck's tolerance and fatigue. And there you have it. Another Q&A wrapped up. Let's see some more unique questions like this, and I'll be sure to answer them next time.